The vast halls of the draconian imperial palace echoed with the heavy footsteps of Emperor Valdris as he approached the war room. His crimson scales gleamed under the artificial suns that lit the chamber, and his golden eyes surveyed the holographic display that showed the extent of his empire. 847 star systems bowed before his might, their worlds either conquered or reduced to ash. For 3,000 years, the Draconian Empire had swept across the galaxy like a crimson tide, and no species had ever successfully resisted their advance. General Thax stood at attention as the Emperor entered, his own dark scales bearing the scars of countless battles. Behind him, the War Council of 12 generals waited in perfect formation, their eyes focused on the newest addition to their star maps. A small yellow star in a distant spiral arm, unremarkable except for one detail that had caught their scouts' attention. "Report," Valdris commanded, his voice carrying the authority of absolute power. "My Emperor, our deep space reconnaissance has discovered a new species," Thax began, activating the holographic display. "They call themselves humans, and they inhabit the third planet of a system they named Sol. Our initial scans indicate a single world civilization with primitive technology. No faster-than-light travel, no energy shields, no plasma weaponry. Standard conquest protocols should suffice." The Emperor studied the rotating image of the blue and green world called Earth. Its continents were divided into numerous political entities, typical of species that had not yet unified under a single banner. Population scans showed approximately 8 billion individuals, a respectable number for harvesting into the Empire's labor force. The planet's resources appeared adequate, though nothing exceptional by draconian standards. "Estimated resistance level?" Valdris inquired, though the question was merely procedural. No species at this technological level had ever posed a threat to draconian forces. "Minimal, my Emperor. They possess chemical rockets, nuclear weapons of limited yield, and basic orbital infrastructure. Our analysts project total surrender within 72 hours of ultimatum delivery. Standard conquest fleet should be more than sufficient." Admiral Corex, the youngest member of the War Council, stepped forward. "My Emperor, if I may suggest deploying the second battle fleet instead. These humans appear to have some unusual characteristics that our xenobiologists find ... interesting." Valdris turned his golden gaze toward the Admiral. "Explain." "Their evolutionary path is unusual, my Emperor. Unlike most sapient species we've encountered, humans appear to be persistence predators. Their homeworld shows evidence of extreme climate variations, natural disasters, and multiple extinction events, yet they not only survived but thrived. Our analysts note an unusual pattern in their historical records of conflict adaptation and technological acceleration under pressure." General Thax dismissed the concern with a wave of his clawed hand. "Irrelevant. Primitive species often display interesting evolutionary traits. It changes nothing. They have no defense against our plasma cannons, no shields to resist our bombardment, and no ships capable of matching our speed or firepower." The Emperor considered this briefly, then nodded. "Standard conquest fleet it is. 200 ships should be adequate to demonstrate our power and secure their surrender. Who will command?" "I volunteer, my Emperor," Admiral Corex said quickly. "This will be an excellent opportunity to blood some of our newer crews against a harmless opponent." "Granted. Depart within the hour. Follow standard protocol. Deliver the ultimatum. Allow 72 hours for consideration, then proceed with conquest operations if they refuse to surrender." As the War Council dispersed, none of the Draconians noticed the small detail their sensors had missed. Hidden in the asteroid belt of the Sol system, automated construction facilities had been working for decades. The humans had been preparing. 3 days later, the Draconian conquest fleet materialized at the edge of the Sol system, their ships emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. 200 vessels of varying sizes, from massive dreadnoughts to swift destroyers, arranged themselves in the traditional display pattern designed to intimidate primitive species into immediate surrender on Earth. Admiral Kane stood in the command center of the United Earth Defense Coalition, watching the Alien ships appear on his screens. Around him, the command staff maintained professional calm despite the magnitude of what they faced. Kane was a tall man with graying hair and steel blue eyes that had seen humanity through 3 major conflicts. He understood war, and he understood the price of freedom. "Communications, open a channel to the lead alien vessel," Kane ordered. The response came within minutes. The holographic display activated, showing a scaled humanoid figure with golden eyes and an expression of casual superiority. Admiral Corax's voice filled the command center, translated by the Universal Communication Protocols, the Draconians. "Used for all primitive species. I am Admiral Corax of the Draconian Imperial Fleet. You will identify yourself and prepare to receive terms for your planet's integration into the Draconian Empire." Kane stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. "I am Admiral Kane, representing the United Earth Defense Coalition. State your business in our system." The Draconian Admiral's expression shifted slightly, surprised by the calm response. Most species showed immediate fear or confusion when faced with their first contact with the Empire. "Your system and planet are now claimed by the Draconian Empire. You have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. Submit your military forces for integration, prepare your population for relocation, and transfer all technological data to our representatives. Compliance ensures survival, resistance ensures extinction." Kane listened to the ultimatum without changing expression. When the Draconian finished speaking, the human admiral was quiet for a long moment, considering his response. Around him, his staff waited in perfect silence, their training evident in their disciplined calm. Finally, Kane looked directly into the alien admiral's golden eyes and spoke with quiet certainty. "Admiral Corax, I want you to understand something very clearly. We are not like the other species you've conquered. We've been watching your empire's expansion for longer than you realize. We've studied your tactics, your technology, and your methods. We know what you are, and we know what you do to the worlds you conquer." The Draconian admiral leaned forward slightly, intrigued despite himself by the human's unexpected response. Kane continued, his voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. "We're going to give you the same 72 hours you've given us, but not to surrender. We're giving you 72 hours to leave our system and never return. Consider this your only warning." Admiral Corax's scales darkened with anger. "You dare threaten the Draconian Empire? Your primitive world cannot hope to resist our might." Kane's expression never changed. "We warned you to run, Admiral. What happens next is your choice." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in silence. Kane turned to his staff, his steel blue eyes now showing the fire that had carried humanity through every crisis they had ever faced. "Signal all defense platforms. Activate the Prometheus protocol. Let's show them what humans do when cornered." 72 hours passed like the calm before a storm. Admiral Corax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Fang, studying the tactical displays with growing irritation. The human world continued its normal operations as if a Draconian fleet wasn't positioned at their system's edge. No surrender transmissions had been received, no diplomatic envoys had approached, and no signs of panic were detected from their primitive communications networks. Still no response from the planet. "Admiral," reported Captain Vex, his communications officer. "Their military installations remain active, and we're detecting increased activity around their orbital facilities." Corax's golden eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical readouts. The humans possessed a modest collection of space-based infrastructure. Several orbital stations, a small lunar base, and what appeared to be mining operations in their asteroid belt. Nothing that could pose a threat to Draconian warships, yet something about their calm response unsettled him. "Very well. Signal the fleet. We'll begin with a demonstration of power against their moon base. One plasma barrage should convince them that resistance is futile." The Draconian fleet began its advance toward the inner system, their ships moving in the traditional pyramid formation that had struck fear into countless species across the galaxy. 200 vessels advancing like a crimson spear toward the small blue world that dared defy the Empire's might. Captain Stone watched the alien advance from the command center of Defense Platform 7, one of 12 heavily armed stations positioned throughout the Sol system. Stone was a career military officer, lean and sharp-eyed, with the kind of calm intensity that came from years of preparing for this exact moment. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, their movements precise and practiced. "Bogies are advancing on the lunar base," reported Lieutenant Marcus from his tactical station. "Range 4 million kilometers in closing." Stone nodded, his fingers dancing across his command console. "All platforms, this is 7 actual. Targets are entering engagement range. Weapons free on my mark." The Draconians had studied human technology from long-range scans, and their analysis was correct about humanity's limitations. Humans indeed lacked faster-than-light travel, energy shields, and plasma weapons. What the Draconians hadn't considered was what humans did possess: 3 centuries of warfare evolution, an understanding of physics that bordered on the obsessive, and a willingness to turn anything into a weapon. "Firing solution locked," Marcus reported. "All tungsten rods aligned and ready for launch." Stone smiled grimly. "Fire." Throughout the Sol system, 12 defense platforms simultaneously launched their primary weapons. Not energy beams or explosive missiles, but simple tungsten rods, each weighing several tons and accelerated by magnetic launchers to a significant fraction of light speed. The Draconians' energy shields, designed to deflect plasma bolts and laser beams, offered no protection against pure kinetic energy delivered. At relativistic velocities, Admiral Corex was reviewing deployment orders when his flagship lurched violently to port. Emergency klaxons blared throughout the bridge as damage reports flooded in from across the fleet. On his tactical display, red warning icons appeared over 17 ships, including 2 of his heavy cruisers. "Report." Corex shouted over the alarms. "Unknown weapon impact, Admiral." Captain Vex called back, his scaled hands working frantically at his console. "We're detecting massive kinetic strikes across the fleet. No energy signatures, no missile trails. The weapons appear to be solid projectiles moving at extreme velocity. Impossible. Our shields should stop any primitive kinetic weapon." "Sir." "The projectiles are moving at approximately 12% light speed. Our energy shields can't deflect pure kinetic force at that velocity." Corex stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 17 ships damaged or destroyed in a single volley from weapons his analysts had assured him didn't exist. The humans had somehow managed to accelerate simple metal rods to speeds that turned them into devastating weapons of unprecedented power. "Launch fighters," Corex ordered. "If they want to play with kinetic weapons, we'll show them the superiority of Draconian energy technology." 200 Draconian fighter craft launched from their carriers, sleek predators designed for swift strikes against enemy positions. Their pilots were veterans of dozens of campaigns, confident in their energy weapons and advanced maneuvering systems. They advanced toward the human positions in perfect formation, expecting to overwhelm the primitive defenders with superior technology and training. "Commander." Blake led the human fighter response from the cockpit of his modified interceptor. Unlike the elegant Draconian craft, human fighters were built for function over form, angular, heavily armed, and designed around the principle that the best defense was overwhelming offense. Blake's squadron consisted of 48 fighters, outnumbered more than 4 to 1 by the advancing alien force. "Pack formation, people," Blake transmitted to his pilots. "Remember your training. We're not trying to match them ship for ship. We're wolves and they're deer." The Draconian fighters approached in their traditional attack formation, expecting the humans to respond with conventional fighter tactics. Instead, Blake's squadron split into groups of 4, each team coordinating their movements with precision. That confused the alien pilots. The human fighters didn't engage directly but instead used hit-and-run tactics, striking from unexpected angles before disappearing behind debris fields and orbital structures. "What are they doing?" muttered Flight Leader Zack as he watched the human fighters on his tactical display. "They're not following any logical combat doctrine." His wingman, Pilot Nex, responded with equal confusion. They're moving like a hunting pack, sir. I've never seen anything like it. The human fighters struck without warning, their weapons designed for maximum damage rather than elegant energy discharges. Railguns and missile pods unleashed devastating volleys before the attackers vanished behind asteroids or orbital debris. The Draconians found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to engage in traditional combat, instead using tactics that seemed almost animalistic in their unpredictability. Blake's voice crackled over the communication channels as his fighters continued their assault. Remember, we're not here to dogfight. Hit hard, disappear, let them wonder where the next attack is coming from. Within 30 minutes, the Draconian fighter force had been reduced by half, their elegant formations shattered by an enemy that fought like no species they had ever encountered. The remaining alien pilots found themselves jumping at shadows, their advanced sensors unable to predict where the next human attack would originate. Admiral Corax watched his tactical display with growing alarm as his fighter squadrons were systematically destroyed by an enemy that should have been easy prey. The humans weren't fighting like a civilized species. They were fighting like predators that understood warfare at a level that made his 3,000 years of military doctrine seem inadequate. All ships, retreat to safe distance, Corax ordered, his voice tight with controlled fury. Signal Imperial Command, we need reinforcements. As the Draconian fleet withdrew to the outer system, Admiral Kane stood in his command center, watching the alien ships retreat. Around him, his staff worked with quiet satisfaction, their months of training and preparation finally paying off. The first engagement had gone exactly as planned. Damage report, Kane requested. Minimal losses, sir, reported his tactical officer. We lost 3 fighters and took minor damage to Platform 4. Enemy losses: 17 capital ships damaged or destroyed, 96 fighters destroyed. They're withdrawing to regroup. Kane nodded, studying the retreating alien fleet on his displays. Signal all commands. Phase 1 is complete. Begin Phase 2 preparations. As the command staff began implementing the next stage of Earth's defense plan, Kane allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. The Draconians had expected an easy conquest of a primitive world. Instead, they had encountered something they didn't understand, a species that had spent centuries preparing for this exact moment, turning their entire solar system into a weapon designed to humble the galaxy's most feared empire. The first lesson had been delivered. The Draconians were learning that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their refusal to fight fair. The throne room of the Draconian Imperial Palace had never witnessed such a scene. Emperor Valdris stood before the massive holographic display showing the humiliating defeat of Admiral Corax's fleet, his golden eyes burning with rage that made the very air seem to shimmer with heat. Before him, General Thax knelt in the traditional position of failure, his dark scales reflecting the crimson light of the throne room's eternal flames. Explain to me how a primitive species with no energy weapons managed to destroy 17 of our ships, Valdris commanded, his voice carrying a deadly calm that every Draconian in the chamber recognized as far more dangerous than shouting. General. Thax kept his eyes fixed on the floor as he spoke. My Emperor, the humans employed weapons our analysts had not anticipated. They accelerated simple, kinetic projectiles to velocities that rendered our energy shields useless. Their fighter tactics were unlike anything in our military databases. And you see this as an excuse for failure? No, my Emperor. I see it as evidence that these humans require a different approach. Valdris studied the tactical recordings from the battle, watching human fighters move in patterns that defied conventional military doctrine. Their movements were coordinated yet unpredictable, structured yet chaotic. It was like watching a predator species that had evolved warfare as an art form rather than a science. Summon General Corax, the Emperor ordered, and prepare the third battle fleet for immediate deployment. Within hours, the most feared military commander in Draconian history stood before his Emperor. General Corax was a legend among the Empire's forces, a warrior whose campaigns had crushed 43 separate species and reduced dozens of worlds to cinders. His massive frame bore the scars of countless battles, and his reputation for ruthless efficiency was known throughout the galaxy. "You will take 1,000 ships to the human system," Valdres declared. "You will analyze their unconventional tactics and adapt our strategies accordingly. You will demonstrate why the Draconian Empire has never been successfully resisted." Corax bowed deeply. "It will be done, my Emperor." "What level of response do you authorize?" "Total conquest. If they will not surrender, reduce their world to ash? Make an example that will remind the galaxy why resistance to our empire is futile. And if their tactics prove more challenging than anticipated?" Valdres leaned forward on his throne, his golden eyes reflecting centuries of conquest and dominion. "Then you will show them what the Empire does to species that dare to draw draconian blood. Deploy the planet crackers." 3 weeks later, the largest draconian battle fleet in 50 years materialized at the edge of the Sol system. 1,000 warships arranged in a formation that stretched across millions of kilometers, their combined firepower capable of sterilizing entire worlds. At the center of the fleet, the massive dreadnought Emperor's Wrath served as General Corax's flagship, its hull bristling with weapons designed to crack planetary crusts. Dr. Mills stood in the command center of Manufacturing Station Alpha, watching the alien fleet's arrival on her displays. Mills was a slight woman with brilliant green eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical bun, but her appearance belied the strategic genius that had spent decades preparing for this moment. Around her, the station's crew worked with the calm efficiency of people implementing a plan they had rehearsed countless times. "Confirmed count, 1,000 ships," reported her tactical officer. "We're detecting energy signatures consistent with planet-killing weapons." Mills nodded, her fingers dancing across her command console. "Signal all manufacturing stations. Begin Protocol 7 immediately." Throughout the asteroid belt, 47 hidden manufacturing facilities that had been disguised as mining operations suddenly revealed their true purpose. Automated assembly lines that had been working for decades went into overdrive, producing weapons, ammunition, and defensive systems at a rate that would have been impossible for any conventional industrial base. The Draconians had brought overwhelming force, but humanity had brought something more dangerous: preparation. Admiral Torres received the activation signal aboard his flagship, the Defiant, hidden behind one of Jupiter's moons. Torres was a compact man with dark eyes that held the same intensity as Admiral Kane, and his reputation for tactical innovation was legendary among Earth's military commanders. His fleet consisted of only 200 ships, but each vessel had been specifically designed for the kind of warfare humanity had pioneered. "All ships, this is Torres Actual," he transmitted to his commanders. "The enemy has brought superior numbers and firepower. They expect us to fight them on their terms. Instead, we're going to remind them that humans wrote the book on asymmetric warfare." General Corax studied the human positions from his command center, noting the defensive arrangements around their homeworld. Unlike his previous battle, this time he had analyzed human tactics and adapted draconian strategies accordingly. Their energy shields had been modified to better deflect kinetic projectiles, and their fighters had been retrained to counter the humans' pack-hunting techniques. "Signal the fleet," Corax ordered. "We advance in defensive formation. Expect kinetic bombardment from hidden positions." The Draconian fleet began its methodical advance toward Earth, their ships arranged in overlapping defensive patterns designed to minimize the effectiveness of the humans' tungsten rod weapons. Corax was confident that his adaptations would neutralize the advantages the humans had shown in the previous engagement. That confidence lasted exactly 17 minutes. The attack came from a direction the Draconians had not anticipated, from below the solar system's ecliptic plane. Admiral Torres had positioned his fleet using gravitational mechanics that the aliens' rigid tactical doctrine had never considered. Human ships emerged from behind planets and moons at velocities that should have been impossible, using gravitational slingshots to accelerate beyond their normal capabilities. "Contact bearing 270, Mark 15. called Torres's tactical officer. "Multiple alien squadrons moving to intercept." "All ships, execute pattern Delta," Torres commanded. "Show them what happens when you bring energy weapons to a physics fight." The human fleet didn't engage the Draconians in traditional battle lines. Instead, they used the solar system itself as a weapon. Ships fired their weapons while using planets' gravity wells to curve their projectiles around obstacles, creating trajectories that appeared impossible to the alien commanders. Human vessels disappeared behind asteroids only to emerge from completely different vectors, their movements coordinated by tactical computers that treated three-dimensional space. Like a vast game board, General Corax watched his tactical displays. With growing frustration as human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking his formations from angles his weapons couldn't cover. His adapted shields were working against the kinetic bombardment, but the humans had adapted as well, using their projectiles in ways his analysts hadn't predicted. "Sir, the human projectiles are fragmenting before impact," reported his weapons. "Officer, they're creating shotgun patterns that overwhelm our point defenses, and their ships are using orbital mechanics in ways our navigation computers can't predict," added his tactical officer. "They're treating gravity wells like tactical advantages rather than obstacles." Corax realized with growing alarm that the humans weren't just using unconventional tactics. They were fighting a completely different kind of war. Where Draconian doctrine emphasized overwhelming firepower and rigid formations, the humans treated warfare like a complex physics problem to be solved through creative application of natural laws. "Deploy the planet crackers," Corax ordered grimly. "If we cannot defeat their tactics, we'll remove their ability to employ them." 3 massive vessels at the center of the Draconian fleet began charging their primary weapons. Planet crackers were the Empire's ultimate threat, weapons capable of shattering worlds by destabilizing their geological structure. They had been used only 12 times in Draconian history, each deployment serving as a final demonstration of Imperial power. Admiral Torres watched the alien superweapons charging on his displays and smiled grimly. "Signal Manufacturing Station Alpha, tell Dr. Mills it's time for the big reveal." Throughout the asteroid belt, the hidden manufacturing stations suddenly dropped their disguises. What the Draconians had dismissed as primitive mining operations revealed themselves as the most sophisticated military production facility in human history. Automated factories that had been building weapons for decades suddenly began launching their products in coordinated waves. Thousands of automated defensive platforms emerged from asteroid hiding places, their combined firepower dwarfing anything the Draconians had faced. But more importantly, these platforms were networked together by quantum communication systems that allowed them to coordinate their fire with mathematical precision. "Sir," General Corax's tactical officer called out. In alarm, "We're detecting massive weapons signatures throughout the asteroid belt. The humans appear to have weaponized their entire industrial base." Corax stared at his displays as the true scope of human preparation became clear. They hadn't just been defending their world. They had spent decades turning their entire solar system into a coordinated weapons platform. Every asteroid, every orbital facility, every seemingly innocent space station was part of a defensive network that treated the enemy fleet as a mathematical problem to be solved through overwhelming coordinated fire. The first planet cracker exploded before it could fire, its massive hull torn apart by precisely coordinated kinetic strikes that hit it from 17 different angles simultaneously. The second and third followed within minutes, their destruction calculated and executed with mechanical precision that no living commander could have achieved. As his fleet began to disintegrate around him under the assault of weapons that appeared to be thinking and coordinating like a single vast intelligence, General Corax finally understood what they were facing. The humans hadn't just prepared for war. They had evolved war itself into something the galaxy had never seen. "Signal retreat," he ordered, his voice heavy with the recognition of defeat. "All ships, emergency withdrawal." As the Draconian fleet fled the Sol system, Admiral Torres stood in his command center watching the enemy retreat. his tactical officer, was reporting damage assessments and casualty figures, but Torres was thinking about the message this battle would send throughout the galaxy. The Draconian Empire had brought overwhelming force and failed. They had adapted their tactics and failed. They had deployed their ultimate weapons and failed. Now the galaxy would learn that humanity possessed something more dangerous than any weapon: the ability to turn an entire star system into a coordinated instrument of war. The second lesson had been delivered, and it was more terrifying than the first. The emergency session of the Draconian High Command convened in the deepest chambers of the Imperial Palace, where the walls themselves seemed to pulse with the rage emanating from Emperor Valdris. General Corax knelt before the throne, his once proud form diminished by the weight of unprecedented defeat. Around him, the Empire's greatest military minds struggled to comprehend how their most powerful fleet had been routed by a species they had dismissed as primitive. "Two fleets?" Valdris spoke, his voice carrying the cold fury of 3 millennia of unchallenged dominance. "Two of our finest fleets, defeated by a single world with no interstellar empire. No energy weapons, no faster-than-light technology. War Marshal Dex, the eldest member of the High Command, stepped forward. "My Emperor, perhaps we should consider that these humans possess knowledge we have overlooked. Their tactical innovations suggest a level of strategic thinking that— Are you suggesting that inferior species could teach the Draconian Empire anything about warfare?" Valdris interrupted, his golden eyes fixing on the War Marshal with deadly intensity. "No, my Emperor," Dex replied quickly. "I am suggesting that underestimating them further could prove costly." General Corax raised his head slightly. "My Emperor, if I may speak, the humans fight unlike any species we have encountered. They do not seek to match our strength with strength, but instead they turn our advantages against us. They have made their entire star system into a weapon." Valdris considered this, his clawed fingers drumming against the armrest of his throne. "Then we will demonstrate why the Draconian Empire has ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Prepare the 7th Fleet and summon Admiral Rex from the Outer Rim campaigns." The mention of Admiral Rex sent a ripple of unease through the assembled commanders. Rex was the Empire's most ruthless strategist, known throughout the galaxy for tactics so devastating that entire species had surrendered rather than face his fleets. His campaigns in the Outer Rim had reduced 14 star systems to lifeless rock, and his reputation for creative destruction was legendary even among the Draconians. Meanwhile, in the Sol System, humanity was not waiting for the next attack. Captain Reed stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned starship Prometheus, humanity's first faster-than-light vessel. The ship was a hybrid of human engineering and captured Draconian technology, reverse-engineered by teams of scientists who had worked around the clock since the first alien encounter. Reed was a lean woman with short-cropped, black hair and eyes that held the same determination that had carried humanity through every crisis in their history. Around her, the crew of the Prometheus prepared for humanity's first offensive mission beyond their home system. "Engineering reports all systems nominal," called out Lieutenant Park from his station. "The hybrid drive is operating within acceptable parameters." Reed nodded, studying the star charts displayed on her command screen. "Navigation, set course for the Kepler 442 system. Intelligence reports indicate a Draconian supply depot there." "Ma'am," interjected her tactical officer, Commander Hayes, "are we certain about taking the offensive? Every previous human conflict doctrine has emphasized defensive strategies." Reed turned to face her crew, her expression carrying the weight of humanity's new reality. "Every previous human conflict was against other humans. The Draconians have made it clear that they intend to conquer or exterminate us. Defense won't be enough anymore. If we're going to survive, we need to show them that attacking Earth carries consequences beyond their home system." The Prometheus engaged its hybrid drive, and for the first time in human history, a ship built on Earth left the Sol System under its own power. The journey to Kepler 442 took 3 days, during which Reed's crew studied every piece of intelligence they had gathered about Draconian operations. The supply depot at Kepler 442 was a massive orbital facility designed to support Draconian military operations across 3 sectors. It was lightly defended, considered safe due to its location deep within Imperial space where no enemy had ever penetrated. The depot's commander, Supervisor Yex, was reviewing routine supply manifests when his sensors detected an impossible energy signature. "Sir," his tactical officer reported with confusion, "we're detecting a ship approaching from hyperspace. The configuration doesn't match any vessel in our databases." Yex studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. The approaching ship appeared to be constructed using hybrid technology, combining design elements from multiple species in ways that suggested rapid reverse engineering and adaptation. "Signal the ship," Yex ordered. "Demand identification and purpose." The response came in perfect Draconian, spoken by a human voice that carried quiet confidence. "This is Captain Reed of the United Earth Defense Coalition starship Prometheus. You are ordered to evacuate this facility immediately." Yex stared at his communications display in disbelief. A human ship, deep in Draconian space, making demands of an Imperial facility. The audacity was beyond comprehension. "You dare threaten a Draconian installation?" Yex responded. "This facility is under the protection of the Imperial fleet." Reed's voice remained calm. "Supervisor, you have 10 minutes to evacuate your personnel. After that, we will demonstrate what humans do to supply lines that support attacks on our homeworld." What followed was a masterclass in the tactical evolution that had made humanity so dangerous. The Prometheus didn't attack the depot directly. Instead, it deployed a series of devices that Reed's crew had developed specifically for this mission. The devices attached themselves to the depot's hull and began broadcasting a signal that interfered with Draconian navigation systems. Within hours, supply ships throughout the sector began experiencing navigation failures that sent them off course, disrupting the carefully coordinated logistics network that supported Draconian military operations across 3 star systems. The depot itself became a beacon of confusion, its systems compromised by human-designed viruses that turned Draconian technology against itself. "This is impossible," Supervisor Yex muttered as his facility systems began shutting down one by one. "How did they learn to manipulate our technology so quickly?" Reed's voice crackled over the communication channel. "You wanted to see what happens when you attack a species that treats every setback as a learning opportunity. Consider this your first lesson in human innovation." News of the Kepler 442 incident spread throughout the Draconian Empire within days. For the first time in their history, an enemy had struck at Imperial territory, and not through overwhelming force but through tactics that turned Draconian advantages into weaknesses. The psychological impact was enormous. If humans could reach Kepler 442, no Imperial facility was safe. Commander Hart led the second wave of human offensive operations, coordinating strikes against Draconian supply lines throughout their border regions. Hart was a veteran of Earth's Special Operations Forces, and he understood that the best way to fight a superior enemy was to deny them the resources they needed to maintain their advantage. His teams used modified human ships to conduct hit-and-run attacks that left Draconian commanders struggling to predict where the next strike would occur. Unlike conventional military operations, the human attacks followed no recognizable pattern except their devastating effectiveness at disrupting Imperial logistics. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Cole from the navigation station of Hart's ship, the Marauder, "we've identified another target. Draconian fuel depot in the Vega system, lightly defended." Hart studied the intelligence data, noting the depot's position along a major supply route. "What's the garrison strength?" "Minimal. The Draconians appear to be redeploying their forces to strengthen positions closer to the Sol system." Hart smiled grimly. "Perfect. They're thinking defensively, trying to prevent another Sol system scenario. They don't understand that we're not planning to hold territory. We're planning to make it too expensive for them to maintain their offensive operations." The attack on the Vega depot demonstrated humanity's most terrifying characteristic: their ability to learn and adapt at a pace that made conventional military planning obsolete. Where the Kepler 442 attack had used technological warfare, the Vega operation employed pure kinetic force delivered with surgical precision. Human ships appeared without warning, struck with devastating accuracy, and disappeared before draconian reinforcements could respond. But more importantly, they left behind automated devices that continued to disrupt Imperial operations long after the human forces had withdrawn. Admiral Rex received reports of the human offensive operations while en route to the Sol system with the 7th Fleet. Rex was a massive draconian with silver scales and eyes like chips of obsidian, and his reputation for ruthless efficiency had made him the Empire's most feared commander. He studied the tactical reports with growing interest, rather than alarm. "Fascinating," he murmured to his aide, Captain Vok. "These humans are not content to simply defend their territory. They understand that the best defense requires taking the offensive. Sir, should we divert forces to protect our supply lines?" Rex shook his head. "No, that would be playing into their strategy. They want us to spread our forces thin to react to their initiatives rather than pursuing our own objectives. Instead, we will demonstrate the price of striking at the Draconian Empire." The 7th Fleet consisted of 1,500 ships, the largest military force the Empire had ever assembled for a single campaign. Rex's strategy was different from his predecessors. Rather than attempting to match human tactics, he would force them to fight on draconian terms through sheer overwhelming power. "Signal the fleet," Rex ordered. "We advance on the Sol system in 3 waves. The humans have shown they can defeat our forces when we allow them to dictate the terms of engagement. This time, we will give them no choice but to face our full might directly." Back in the Sol system, Admiral Kane received intelligence reports about the approaching Draconian fleet with grim satisfaction. The offensive operations had achieved their primary objective, forcing the Empire to commit larger and larger forces to what they still believed was a single primitive world. "Signal all commands," Kane ordered from his command center. "Begin Phase 3 preparations. It's time to show them what we've really been building out here." Dr. Mills stood in the primary control center of Manufacturing Complex Prime, a facility that dwarfed even the impressive installations that had already shocked the Draconians. Mills had spent the weeks since the last battle implementing the final stages of humanity's decades-long preparation. "Status report," she requested from her chief engineer. "All primary systems online, Doctor. The Quantum Coordination Network is fully operational across all 47 manufacturing stations. We're ready to begin full-scale production." Mills nodded, studying the displays that showed the true scope of humanity's industrial capability. The manufacturing stations that had impressed the Draconians were merely the visible portion of a construction network that stretched throughout the Sol system. Hidden facilities in the Kuiper Belt, disguised installations on the outer planets, and automated construction ships that had been building in secret for decades. "Begin Protocol 9, Mills ordered. "Show them what happens when you give humans time to prepare." As the Draconian 7th Fleet approached the Sol system, Admiral Rex expected to encounter the same defensive installations that had defeated his predecessors. Instead, his sensors detected something that defied comprehension, an industrial complex that appeared to span the entire outer solar system. "Sir," his tactical officer reported with barely concealed alarm, "we're detecting massive construction activity throughout their system. Energy signatures suggest manufacturing capability that exceeds most planetary industrial bases." Rex studied the sensor readings with growing unease. The humans hadn't just been defending their homeworld. They had been transforming their entire star system into something unprecedented in galactic history. "How long have they been building this?" he asked quietly. "Based on the construction signatures, sir, decades. Possibly since before we first encountered them." Rex realized with cold certainty that humanity had been preparing for this war long before the Draconian Empire had even known they existed. Every delay, every tactical withdrawal, every seemingly desperate Defensive action had been buying time for construction projects that dwarfed anything in Imperial experience. "Signal the fleet," Rex ordered. "All ships, maximum alert. We are not facing a primitive species defending their homeworld. We are facing something that has been planning for this war longer than we have been fighting it." As the largest draconian fleet in history advanced toward Earth, humanity prepared to reveal the final scope of their preparations. The lessons taught in the previous battles had been warnings. What was coming next would be education through overwhelming demonstration of what happened when the galaxy's most dangerous predators were given time to prepare for war. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the future balance of power throughout the galaxy. The Draconian Empire was about to discover that their greatest mistake hadn't been underestimating human technology or tactics. Their greatest mistake had been giving humans time to turn an entire star system into a weapon designed specifically to humble the galaxy's apex predators.